So Josh Heupel got a raise on Tuesday. Danny White got a raise on Wednesday. You're going to get a raise tomorrow, and then maybe I'll get a raise next week. I mean, it's like Monopoly money out here. A lot of money going around on Rocky Top, but what's to say about the administration at the University of Tennessee? We got a lot to talk about here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, and I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for making Locked On Vols your number one listen, your first listen each and every day, your first view on YouTube. If you're watching, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can always find me and the show on Twitter at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols. This episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. You can make every moment matter more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to head and get started. All right, so Josh Heupel on Tuesday. Josh Heupel on Tuesday. It was announced that he's getting a raise up to $9 million annually. It's a $4 million bump from what he was making in 2022 and a $5 million bump from when he was hired in January of 2021. That moved him to number 5 in the SEC, tied for 5th, and into the top 10 in salaries amongst the entire nation. So Tennessee made quite an investment coach in Josh Heupel. On Wednesday, all right, the league the university announced that it's made a similar investment into Danny White. The signs are not as large as that of Josh Heupel, but the man who was hired to come in and fix football, and he brought his own guy from UCF, Danny White, he is getting a contract extension from the University of Tennessee. Excuse me. If you're watching, you can see it on the bottom ticker there here on YouTube. It is a 6-year rollover contract, meaning it rolls over every single year, so there's always 6 years on that deal. $2.2 million annually. It's a pretty sweet deal for Danny White. I'll go on. He made $1.9 million in 2021, so he's making $2.2 million starting out here in 2023. He's guaranteed a 5% raise every single year. So in 2024, his salary is going to be $2.31 million. It's pretty incredible, right? I mean, talk about a good salary. If White were to leave the university by his choice, he would owe the school 1 year of his salary he was making at the time he left, provided that Donde Plowman is still the chancellor. If Plowman is not the chancellor, then White would owe the school 50% or half of his annual salary at the time of his departure, which would, again, by that time, since there's always 6 years on the deal, he'll be in the middle of that 6 years, so it'll be 5.5 years on that deal. But, I mean, you talk about a pretty sweet deal here. And that message that essentially Danny White is sending to the university, and what he's saying here with this language in the contract is, hey, we are in a line. Okay, we are all in unison. We're all on the same page. Administration, chancellor, athletic director, football coach. I like where we are at Tennessee. I like the vision that we have right here at the University of Tennessee. And so if Donde Plowman is fired or she leaves and they bring in a new chancellor or something like that, those visions might align. They might not. And maybe he would try to look for a new opportunity, or maybe he would be dismissed or whatever the case may be. Of course, if Tennessee dismisses him, they got to owe him because they got to owe him money, obviously, because he wouldn't be fired for cause most likely. But if he were wanting to leave, he literally put in the language like, hey, if I'm leaving by my own choice, I owe the school 1 year of the salary that they're making at the time of he left. So if it's in 2024, it'd be $2.31 million. If it was 2025, it's 5% up from that. But if Donde Plowman is not the chancellor, then he only has to pay the school 50% or half of the annual salary at the time of his departure. That is not bad. I mean, what a statement here the last 2 days from the University of Tennessee, right? It's pretty incredible. If the university were to fire White without cause, they would owe him his full contract, which means they would owe him an excess of $11 million, depending on whenever he is fired, because remember, it is a rollover contract. White's bonus structure remains the same. He can earn up to a maximum of $300,000 in various bonuses, from basketball achievements to football achievements, as well as overall department standings in the Learfield Cup. Last year, White maxed out his bonuses which he's expected to do this year as well. This is Chancellor Donde Plowman when the news was broke. Danny White's strong and innovative leadership of our athletics department has created a championship culture and excellence across all sports in record time. He's built the best team of athletic administration in the country, a team committed to our student athletes' well-being and winning with integrity. He has set audacious goals for the athletics department and is exceeding every milestone. I appreciate his leadership, his vision, his commitment to making the University of Tennessee the very best. Danny White is quoted in saying, I am so fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. We have exceptional leadership, starting with Chancellor Donde Plowman, and incredible support from President Randy Boyd and the Board of Trustees Chair John Compton. We had the best roster of coaches in college athletics, talented student athletes, and a dynamic administrative team to support this enterprise. Most importantly, the passion of Vol Nation gives us a unique opportunity to build the very best athletic department in America. We're just getting started on Rocky Top. I can't wait to see what's next. End quote. That from Danny White. He's earned it, right? Let's see. Danny White's UT has won 6 SEC titles in White's 2 first years. Okay, he's been in the job 2 years. Under White, Tennessee won its first ever overall SEC All-Sports Trophy, with the men finishing first and the women finishing second. UT sold 17,297 new football season tickets in 2022 and has already sold 7,500 more for the 2023 football season. You look at where Tennessee athletics is as a whole right now, the latest AP rankings or preseason rankings for this respective sports. Here's where Tennessee is right now under Danny White. Baseball is high as number 2 in the nation per many preseason polls. Men's track and field, 3rd. Men's basketball, 4th in the AP right now. Tennessee football finished 6th in the nation. Men's tennis is 6th. Men's golf is 7th. Men's swimming and dive is 8th. Women's swimming and dive is 12th. Softball came in the preseason as high as number 12 in the nation. Rowing, women's tennis, men's cross country, all in the top 25. And women's basketball currently not in the top 25, but 8-0 in SEC play and has a monster showdown tonight with a top 10 UConn team. Tennessee athletics is rolling right now, and Danny White is a big reason for that. Sure, a lot of these coaches were hired on by whoever, before, whether it be the previous regime or the one before that. I mean, there's been a lot of coaches that have been here for quite some time, but there's also been some new faces and some new money in this game. But what Danny White does a great job is, again, that that single vision of wanting to be on the same page with Chancellor Donde Plowman and with the President Randy Boyd. And he's a money maker, guys. I mean, he's a great fundraiser guy. I mean, if you're an athletics director, you got to be able to raise some money, and he's done that. With the Tennessee Hope scholarships and all that, and of course with the volunteer club, that's Spire Sports and that's NIL. But with the I'm blanking on myself right now, but the Tennessee Fund, he's done a great job with that, and he really has. In 2 years, he's been doing a phenomenal work, and he's now the highest earning SEC athletics director. So congrats to him. $2.2 million is where he's going to start in 2023, a 5% pay increase every single year. It's not bad. It's not bad whatsoever. And it's a statement from the university on down saying, hey, we are here. We have a clear vision all across the board. Our athletics director pretty much put the language in his contract, essentially saying, hey, if I leave on my own terms, I pay you back 100% of 1 year's salary. If I leave when Chancellor Donde Plowman is not here, I'm only paying you $50. And everybody signed off on that. That means he loves working with Donde Plowman and the Chancellor. When Tennessee was at rock bottom a couple years ago, there was so much rotation in terms of athletics director, of university presidents, of university chancellor. I mean, could you ever imagine in January of 2021 when you were hitting that reset button once again that you'd be where you are now, an 11-win season, okay? Paying a football coach in Josh Heupel, who at the time was criminally underpaid at $4 million, $9 million annually, and bumping up your athletics director to over $2 million in the second year, or going into his third year. How about that? Tennessee is humming right now, and it's got the right man for the job, and this athletics director in Danny White. So I wanted to share a lot of that with you guys. I know you guys saw it yesterday, but it's monopoly money right now. I'm waiting for my raise. I know you're waiting for your raise, but again, if you're a Tennessee fan, you you probably have never felt stronger about just the entire state of the athletics department. And a lot of that has to do with Danny White, who was awarded with a new 6-year deal on Tuesday. Okay, when we come back, we're going to get into Vols in the NFL mock drafts. There was a Tennessee Volunteer who was mocked in the first round by Mel Kiper Jr. That is coming up next right here on Locked on Vols. But I want to tell you about our new proud sponsor here to join the show and the network. It's FanDuel Sportsbooks. We're so excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, and that is FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, join today and get started with $150 in free bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. All you need to do, just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlay. The NFL playoffs are this weekend. NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game. You got Tennessee and Texas coming up on Saturday in that Big 12 SEC Challenge. All right. Point spreads, player props, half totals, whatever you want. You can find all that at FanDuel Sportsbook. So it's all in the app. It's safe and secure, and it's so easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose. That's at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, guys, welcome back into your Thursday show. It is Locked On Vols, and I'm your host, Eric Kane. So glad that you guys are here with me here today. Appreciate you. If you're watching, if you're listening, you have a YouTube account. I say this every day, but please, for real, consider. Don't just consider, do it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but consider subscribing to the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. It might not seem like you're making a difference, but you are literally paying my salary. So for those of you that have and will, thank you so much. One little subscription can go a long way. I promise you that. It just helps me to do what I love to do, and that's why I'm so thankful for you guys. All right, enough of that ish. So Mel Kiper Jr. has a Tennessee Volunteer mocked in his first round. Of course, there's mock drafts. There's way too early mock drafts back in May and June, right after the NFL draft in 2022. And then there's mock drafts right before the season, during the season, after the season. There's mock drafts out here now in the new year. There's going to be mock drafts before and after the combine, before and after pro day, all the way up until the hours before the April 27th, I believe, is when the draft starts. So there's mock drafts all over the place. All right. And Mel Kiper Jr. has a Tennessee Volunteer in his latest mock draft. If I just were to say that, you'd probably say, oh, Jalen Hyatt, right? Jalen Hyatt. I mean, he's been projected as a late round or early second round guy or mid second round guy for a little bit now. It's fluid. Things will move. But, you would probably say, oh, it's probably Jalen Hyatt, right? No, it's not Jalen Hyatt. Maybe it's Darnell Wright. Yeah, maybe Darnell Wright makes sense. It's not Darnell Wright. Hendon Hooker? Even healthy, Hendon Hooker wasn't going to go that high. Cedric Tillman, probably not, coming off an injury this year. I mean, who else is there, right? Byron Young. I was shocked to see this, and good for Byron Young, but I was shocked to see this. You have Mel Kiper Jr., veteran, NFL analyst, draft analyst, has mocked Mel Kiper, has mocked Byron Young of Tennessee 20th overall to the Seattle Seahawks. How about that? 6'3", 245-pounder, an edge player. He was pretty much a defensive end in the 4-3, but he could stand up in 2 and go out and cover, the number 3 wide receiver, cover the flats or whatever. He does a little bit of everything. Such a unique skill set, and we saw that on display here at Tennessee the last 2 years. That is Byron Young, but he's got him going number 20 overall in the first round to the Seattle Seahawks in his latest mock draft that came out Wednesday morning. This over at ESPN from Mel Kiper Jr. He's quoted in saying, kind of in his introductory of the pick, we're back with another Seattle pick here after I projected general manager John Schneider to take a quarterback at number 5. Spoilers, if you look at that mock draft, they have Will Levis going number 5 to Seattle in the top 5. Yikes. Back to the quote, "Let's focus on defense now," Kiper said. The Seahawks struggled against the run this season, and we know Coach Pete Carroll loves toolsy edge defenders. A.J. Collier didn't work out in round 1 in 2019, but Darrell Taylor in round 2 in 2020 is coming off a breakout 9.5 sack season. Bruce Irvin made his way back to the team in 2022 as well. Darrell Taylor, if you remember, was kind of a surprise going in the second round back in 2020 by Pete Carroll and by the Seattle Seahawks. So there's right. They have a history of drafting edge players, those Leos, those stand-up defensive ends, outside linebackers, early in the draft. He goes on to say, Young, another prospect who will be at the Senior Bowl, is intriguing. At 6'3", 245 pounds, he fits the mold of what Carroll wants from a front seven defender. He has the same pass rush upside. He had 7 sacks and 13.5 TFLs in 2022, showing off advanced moves. The Seahawks knocked their 2022 class out of the ballpark, and a home run in 2023 could set up for another long run of success. End quote. That is what Mel Kiper Jr. had to say about Byron Young, who he mocked number 20th overall to Seattle in his latest NFL mock draft that was released on Wednesday morning. 2 seasons at Tennessee. Byron Young totaled 83 tackles, 23.5 TFLs, 12.5 sacks. He logged 1 interception in 24 games. Trivia question. Do you guys remember what game Byron Young had that interception in? I'll give you a second to think about it. Hopefully some of you guys are shouting into your speakers now in your car. So hopefully some of you guys are shouting at your computer screens as you're watching YouTube. It was in the Music City Bowl against Purdue. He had that interception. It was towards the sideline, made a really nice athletic play, and that was at the tail end of the 2021 season. A little fun trivia question there because it was just on my mind. So how about that? We'll have to track this. And again, this is all fluid. Byron Young will need to perform well at the Combine. Byron Young will need to perform well at his pro day. Byron Young, most importantly, needs to be knocking it out of the park this week at Senior Bowl practice. The game is whatever. Who gives a crap about the game? It's the practice. The week leading up to these All-Star games for the Reese's Senior Bowl, for the Shrine Bowl, for the NFLPA Bowl, whatever bowl game you're playing in, whatever All-Star showcase you're at, it's the week leading up because you get to show out in practice, you get to show out in front of scouts and GMs and head coaches and all that type of stuff, and you also get to talk and meet with them. It's why Hendon Hooker accepted his Reese's Senior Bowl invitation. It's like, well, that's not even news. He's not going to play in the game, but it's because of the opportunity to sit and talk and meet and stuff like that. It's a massive week for an NFL draft prospect. So Byron Young needs to be knocking out of the park as we speak right now in order to be a first-round draft pick. But I thought that was really, really interesting from Mel Kiper, who mocked Tennessee defensive end Byron Young to number 20 by the Seattle Seahawks in this upcoming NFL draft. Okay, so quickly, let's look at the rest of the 31 picks that Mel Kiper throws out there. Remember, only 31 picks this year in the first round because the Dolphins were penalized and got their pick taken away from them. I put out a little tweet out there. I don't know if you guys saw it over on the Twitter sphere. And I quote tweeted the On3 little graphic they had of the top 10 draft picks for Mel Kiper in this mock draft I'm talking about. Number 1, he had Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia, going to Chicago. Number 2, C.J. Stroud, quarterback of Ohio State, going to the Texans. Number 3, edge Will Anderson Jr. of Alabama, going to the Cardinals. 4, Bryce Young of Alabama, quarterback, going to the Colts. 5, Will Levis, quarterback in Kentucky, going to the Seahawks. Number 6, edge player Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, going to the Lions. 7, offensive tackle Peter Skoronski, maybe, of Northwestern, going to the Raiders at 7. Edge Miles Murphy from Clemson, who opted out of the Orange Bowl game. He has him going to the Falcons at 8. Anthony Richardson, quarterback of Florida. Quarterback of Florida, going 9th to the Panthers. And Kalijah Cansey, defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, going 10th to the Eagles. You guys remember him? Did you pick up on a common theme here? I mentioned a lot of names that you guys probably know. And yes, if you're a college football fan, you probably know these names anyway. But specifically, Tennessee played a lot of these guys. And again, I do not think Will Levis should even be sniffing a top 10 pick. But he will. He will be drafted inside the top 10. That will happen. Okay, I don't agree with it, but that will happen. Anthony Richardson, he will likely be drafted in the top 10. I don't agree with it, but you draft on potential. And those two guys, the sky is the ceiling for those guys. Even though they haven't been consistent or shown it's really at all in the case of Will Levis, in my opinion. But Tennessee, I put a little tweet out there. According to this mock draft from Mel Kiper of ESPN's, his latest mock draft, that was released on Wednesday. Tennessee has played 6 of the top 10 players in this mock draft. Myles Murphy would have made it 7, but he opted out of the Orange Bowl. Myles Murphy, defensive lineman from Clemson, would have been the 7th player in this top 10 from Mel Kiper that Tennessee played in 2022, but he opted out. Tennessee played Jalen Carter. Tennessee played Will Anderson Jr. Tennessee played Bryce Young. Tennessee played Will Levis. Tennessee played Anthony Richardson. Tennessee played Kalijah Cansey. I'm missing one. Oh, no. Myles Murphy would have been the 7th. Yeah, and then Myles Murphy would have been the 7th. How about that? How about that? It's incredible. Other highlights as we move on past the top 10. Tennessee Titans. I'm a Titans fan. I don't know about you guys. Paris Johnson Jr. being mocked from Ohio State offensive tackle 11th to the Tennessee Titans. Let's see here. The wide receiver that I can't say his name from Ohio State that set out of the playoffs and missed pretty much all the season. He's being mocked to go to the Jets at 13th. Yes, I use mock as a verb, but a lot of people were a little distraught over that on VolQuest the other day, but it's, you know, I don't think that's news there. Let's see here. Anybody else notable? Anybody else? Broderick Jones, tackle from Georgia, being mocked 16th to the Commanders. There's Byron Younger there at 20. Looking on here to see if there's anybody else notable that we... Jordan Addison, wide receiver, USC, formerly at Pittsburgh, 25th to the Giants. Bijan Robinson, running back from Texas, 26th to the Dallas Cowboys. Yikes. What's a running back in the first round? I mean, that screams that they're going to cut Zeke, right? Because of what Tony Pollard means in that offense. Derek Hall of Auburn, 27th to the Bills. And Brian Branch, safety of Alabama, 30th to the Eagles. Those are some of the notables there. But most notable of them all, and this will change countless times before the draft in April, Mel Kiper Jr. has mocked Tennessee defensive end Byron Young 20th to the Seattle Seahawks and his latest 2023 NFL mock draft over at ESPN.com. That was released on Wednesday. So good stuff there. That is awesome. We'll see if that holds true, or maybe another Tennessee Volunteer could be moving up and being drafted in the first round. Hey, when we come back, we're going to chat with Jacob Hatch of Locked On Cougars. Been teasing it for a while now. He's the host of Locked On Cougars. Tennessee got in quarterback transfer Gabe Jeudy-Lally. That was last week. We're going to ask Jake what the situation is, what the deets are on Tennessee's new cornerback. That is coming up next, right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, we got a final segment left here of this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I've been teasing it. I teased it some last week, been teasing it some this week. We're finally going to bring on our guy, Jake Hatch from Locked On Cougars. He's a friend of the show because he was just on a couple weeks ago discussing Keenan Peely. But Gabe Jeudy-Lally, back when I was out last week, committed to the University of Tennessee via the transfer portal and BYU. So host of Locked On Cougars, Jake Hatch, making a return appearance to the show, second time in about 3 weeks, man. You're a regular now.
Hey, I'm totally okay with that. It's always good to be back on Locked On Vols.
Well, man, tell us about Gabe Jeudy-Lally. He was, to my understanding, at BYU for just one season. Came from Vanderbilt, started his career in the SEC. But when you look at least when I looked at his stats and when I looked at his performances on Pro Football Focus, played over 600 snaps, graded out at 79.1 per Pro Football Focus, which is a really, really solid grade considering the amount of volume of snaps.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy I think Vols fans are going to enjoy having in their program. I know BYU is they were sad to lose him. Let's just put it that way. They were expecting him to be a starter again this year, a guy that is quite brilliant, honestly. He graduated from Vanderbilt in under 3 years, transferred to BYU. Like, this guy is one smart cookie, and I can guarantee you Vols fans are going to be lucky to have him in the defensive backfield.
So is he a guy that has, if my math's correct, does he have 2 years if he wants it of eligibility?
That's the way I understand it. But anymore, Eric, I've decided with COVID years, I've given up trying to figure out eligibility for anybody, really. Once they say I'm done, that's when I'm like, okay, you're done. But yeah, I believe he does have 2 more years of eligibility if he so chooses to exercise both of them.
Sidebar, Tennessee got an offensive tackle from Miami, John Campbell, and like this upcoming year will be his 6th season in college. And I've seen somewhere, I have not talked to the kid. I tried to, but I've seen somewhere where he says he has 2 years of eligibility, and I'm just like, how in the world is that possible? We're almost through. We're halfway through the 4-year cycle, the COVID year, so thankfully there. Back to the cornerback and Gabe Jeudy-Lally. What type of player is he? What are his strengths? What are some of his weaknesses? What should we expect to see out there on the perimeter at cornerback?
Two things I would mention is he is a very good guy when you run zone coverages. That is his strength, is to be a guy who can play in whether it's cover 3, cover 4, cover 2. He is best in zone concepts. And BYU's new defensive coordinator they brought in, Jay Hill, he is more of a guy who wants man press. He wants guys to come up and just absolutely get after guys on the line of scrimmage. That wasn't the only reason that Gabe decided to leave. He had a family situation, if I understand it correctly, that also precipitated him going back east once again. But the biggest thing is he will thrive in a zone concept. I'm not saying that he can't play man, but he is much better in zone schemes. The other thing I love about him as a player is he's a willing tackler. He is not a cornerback who is going to be a finesse guy. He comes up and he absolutely lays the wood in the ground game. I'd honestly say outside of BYU's starting safety this past year, he was probably BYU's best overall tackler in their secondary out of the 8 guys who saw the most snaps. He's a very, very solid athlete. And like I said, not afraid to come up and make a hit.
Well, it's good to hear, obviously, setting the edge there, forcing things back inside. A lot of guys in the secondary kind of shy away from contact. Yeah. Tennessee's got a couple of guys in the secondary, though they need to be better. They're pretty physical to begin with, so he'll fit right in. You got to be fast to play cornerback, but you mentioned the physicality and his strengths in playing in zone coverage. How's the speed in keeping up with some of those wide receivers in man?
I would say he doesn't have elite speed. We're not talking about a guy who's going to run a 4.2, low 4.3 type of a thing, but he's in the 4.4s. So he's got the speed that if he is in the right position, he's going to make plays. And that's the one thing about it. Like I said, he's a very smart kid. He knows how to get himself in good position to make plays. He was trained very, very well at Vanderbilt, I got to say, and played against, he's going back to the SEC. So the level of play for him going back into the Southeastern Conference isn't going to surprise him. He played against a pretty stout schedule here at BYU and did very, very well against it. And I think he'll fit right in with what Tennessee's trying to do.
That kind of led into my next question. Because of that schedule at BYU and because he started off his career at Vanderbilt, do you think that that'll help him? Is he more equipped than some other transfers for an SEC schedule?
Yeah, and he talked about the fact that he's faced off against some of the premier wide receivers. You go down the list of the guys he faced while he was at Vanderbilt, even some of the guys he faced this past year at BYU. He's gone up against some of the best wide receivers that are both in the college game and right now in the NFL as well. And he said, I learned lessons facing every single one of them. Sometimes I got burned. Other times I made a play. And I think that the fact that he's been in the SEC, he went to BYU where he played a mixture of different teams from across the country, whether it was Pac-12, Big 12, SEC, etc. He's got a very well-versed skill set in terms of what he'll be able to show and the fact that he is already familiar with SEC athletes.
Is he a guy that returns kicks at all, or is he primarily just a cornerback?
He did not return kicks at BYU, and I don't think he did so at Vanderbilt. So I think he's essentially a guy who is going to play in the secondary. That's what his strengths are, but he was never called upon to do that. So is it in his skill set? I don't know.
Now, I'm asking you to go back to this time last year, maybe even before that, but why the move from Vanderbilt to BYU? And then you reference a family situation for him maybe wanting to leave BYU right now.
Yeah, so he came to BYU because he actually had a connection with Derwin Gray, who's actually a pastor in North Carolina these days. He's a former BYU All-American and an NFL player, and he actually coached Gabe during his high school years for at least part of it, not all of it. But when Gabe was looking for a new program, Derwin kind of got in his ear and said, hey, you should look at BYU. It's a program. It's faith-based university. It's no nonsense. They play high-level football. And Gabe was looking for a program that was going to be able to get him to a bowl game. That's one thing he actually talked about when he first got to BYU. He was like, I haven't had an opportunity to have a winning season in college. I want to play in a bowl game. And they played in the New Mexico Bowl this year, so it was not necessarily the most prestigious bowl game out there, but he said it was great just to be in a bowl game and have a winning season and have a successful year with a team that he enjoyed playing with. And I don't know all the details on his family situation, but I think it was a mixture of the fact that he maybe didn't necessarily feel like he fit into this new defense BYU is going to implement in spring, and that family situation necessitated him moving back east once again.
Do you think, having played together for the 2022 season, the Keenan Peely's appearance on the Tennessee roster via the transfer portal had anything to do with maybe a landing spot for Gabe Jeudy-Lally, feeling like number one, good opportunity, number two, SEC, but also a guy you just played with is already there and a guy that can kind of show you the ropes a little bit?
I would assume so. I don't know that they're necessarily the closest. Like they were only at BYU for a season together, but I would assume that if Tennessee was smart, they probably had Keenan Peely call up Gabe and say, hey,
oh, he was.
Okay. Oh, yeah. There you go. So, yeah. But this is why I came to Rocky Top. This is why you should come down here and join me. But they played on a defense that struggled mainly because of the defensive line. I felt like at BYU, but both of them very, very solid players.
Anything else on Gabe Jeudy-Lally that Tennessee fans should be looking forward to seeing this spring, next fall, and of course him or Keenan Peely?
Well, I think the biggest thing about Gabe that I enjoy is he's a no-nonsense guy. When things are bad, he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to say, "Yeah, we struggled there," and he'll explain what he sees out there on the field and why he thinks things aren't going the right way that they were going. Because BYU had a 4-game losing streak this season where the defense just got absolutely walloped, and he spoke to the media, I think, 2 or 3 times during that period, and was very forthright about what was going on, what he saw as some of the issues, and what he hoped to improve on. And I think it's a similar thing with Keenan Peely. Keenan's not necessarily as talkative as Gabe. That's one thing lots of people will love about Gabe. He will engage anybody. He's very, very good in media settings and just talking with people. He's
also a defensive back, so they talk trash on the field all the time anyway, right?
It's true. That's a good point. Keenan is just not necessarily as talkative as that. Keenan's more of a guy who likes to kind of say what he has to say with his play on the football field. But both of them are guys that BYU, I know, was sad to lose both of them, but BYU's loss is Rocky Top's gain.
Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, also does radio at KSL. He's a post-game host for everything they do there. Man, you wear many different hats. What are you talking about on Locked On Cougars right now that should interest any college football fan?
Well, we've been going through our transfer portal guys, similar to what you're doing, Eric. So we've been talking about Keaton Slovis coming in from Pitt. Of course, expected to be BYU starting quarterback. Looking ahead to the Senior Bowl, we've got 3 BYU players headed down to Mobile next week. So we got that. And we're also doing a fun thing. BYU is going to be a Power 5 program coming up this fall for the first time ever. They're going to be in the Big 12 Conference, but they played 12 seasons of independent football. I am going to actually get game by game back through the 155 games they played during their independent era and recapping it all. And we're doing it all off season long. It's kind of just a countdown to get us ready for the season. We're about 15 games in and counting right now.
That's what you have. That right there. That is easy content, but that's hard content. That's a lot of research. So good on you. That's a good idea. That's fun.
See, the nice part is my radio career, my professional media career covering BYU actually coincides with BYU's independent era. I've been doing it for 12 years, all of their independent era. So I at least I have some background knowledge of having covered all of these games that I can tap into. But yes, it does require me every day to look up that game and say, okay, what do I remember about this and what do I still need to brush up on?
Still upset that Tennessee's not going to be in Provo for the 2024 opener. Maybe one day. I see the pictures.
Yeah.
I was so looking forward to that really more than anything, but hey, maybe one day we'll make it out there.
Absolutely. I had a great time when I went down to Knoxville in 2019 and would love to make a return trip at some point.
Yeah, Tennessee fans don't like that game. So, Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars. Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks as always, Eric.
All right, and that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols, your Thursday edition. Danny White got paid. Josh Heupel got paid. There's been some NFL prospect boards. Mel Kiper Jr. has a Tennessee Volunteer mocked in the first round. We discussed that as well. We talked with Jacob Hatch, did a whole lot here on this Thursday show. We'll be back again ready for Friday's episode. We'll get you set for Tennessee and Texas in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, that and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. Same time, same place. This is Locked On Vols.